The goal of building a $1 million a year business was a bad goal. In this video, I want to break down why $1 million a year in business was a bad goal for me and what I wish I had done instead. When I first got started in business, my goal was originally to get to $20,000 a month. And when I told other entrepreneurs that that was my goal, they were like, you should think bigger, you should go for $1 million. But for me personally at that time, thinking about anything that was larger than $20,000 a month just felt completely impossible and unrealistic. 20,000 when I was getting started was something that felt doable, very hard, and would be amazing if I got there. It wasn't until I actually got to $20,000 a month that getting to $1 million run rate, basically 84K a month, started to actually feel very, very possible. But that's where a lot of the big obstacles started to come in hindsight. Once I got to 20 and I wanted to get to $1 million, that really became my only goal. If you're scrolling around Twitter or watching YouTube videos, it honestly feels like everybody is making $1 million when the reality is less than 10% of all businesses in the entire United States actually ever cross $1 million in revenue. So for you to cross $1 million in revenue in the first place is super impressive, and you're among a very small crowd. So first of all, don't think that everybody's doing it and that you're so far behind if that is your goal. But additionally, when you're trying to build to $1 million, if that's your only goal, meaning that other things aren't important, you can end up building a business that you don't actually like. Now, depending upon who you follow, it seems like everybody that's making over $1 million is happy. But if you get into the right inner circles, the people that are generating high revenue aren't always the ones that are keeping a lot of money. They don't have a very profitable business. And that ends up happening because you decide that $1 million is your goal and you start taking just about anyone's advice that has gotten to $1 million. And we don't really consider, or most people, and I know I didn't necessarily consider the way in which they got to $1 million and what the rest of their life looks like. Because you could do a lot of things to get to $1 million a year in revenue and not only not have a lot of profit and not pay yourself, but also really not like your business. And it got to the point where I really started to understand this concept of the arrival fallacy. The only way that I really can explain it is when I was training for a half marathon. For years, I told myself that I was not a runner. I'm a cyclist. I'll ride 100 miles before I run 13 or whatever the half marathon was. And so, I said, instead of starting to speak poorly over myself of I'm not a runner, I'm going to train for a half marathon. And in 2018, I think it was, I started training. I started a 12-week program preparing for running my half marathon. I got in some of the best shape of my life. I actually really started to enjoy running. I was a runner and I am a runner because of it. The funny thing is once we got to the day of the race, I had done all the work and I just missed my time goal. I wanted to break 2 hours and I did it in 2 hours and 4 seconds. And so the day after, and really since then, I run very, very infrequently. I do mountain bike a lot, but the reality was the real reward was the way I felt and the discipline and the process of running 3 to 5 times a week and building that habit and the other effects that happened from that. My business was growing, my relationships were thriving, I was healthy, I felt great. But once I achieved the actual goal, it wasn't all that great. And honestly, when we hit $1 million a year in our first year, that first year was like, oh my God, we finally reached the goal, right? And typically the first year that you reach $1 million, you'll often have a high profit. We had a very high profit the first year we hit it, but then you have to have the next goal. And it's like, all right, well, we got to get to 2 million or 3 million. That 1 to 3 million gap, a lot of people will tell you is called the swamp of success. It's where you invest in growth and you kind of have to grow in order to make the leap into 2 million and 3 million. And without going into a ton of details, we invested in growth and the growth came way slower and was way harder to get to 2 million. In fact, our margins shrunk and we felt the pressures of having tight margins in our business. What I realized and what I want to share here with you is if your goal is only to make $1 million, I want you to think about any other goal that you focused on, got there, and you were just like, oh, that wasn't all that great. Because if you sacrifice other things that are important to you along the way, hitting the goal won't really matter all that much to you. Now, if you do get to $1 million and you want to scale to 3, the things that got you to 1 are not going to be the things that get you to 3. Getting to 3 is more about team, leadership, you evolving as a leader. Those are a lot of skills that take time, at least for me, that I'm finding out. Maybe there's other exceptions here, but learning how to manage people and lead through people and get work done through people and not just continue to work yourself into burnout, I've found to be very challenging. And I've also found to be not exactly what everybody wants to do. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that in order to go from 1 to 3 or beyond, that you need a large team. I think that's very much not true anymore. But the pressures that come from then growing above 1, I've seen take a toll on a lot of people and also send them backwards in how much money they're actually making, to the point where they're actually building a business that they don't really even enjoy. And what's been surprising to me is, after talking to a lot of peers and friends that I collaborate with, I'm in masterminds with, etc., there's so many stories of the entrepreneur that was way happier making $600K a year with a $400K a year profit take home than the person who's making $1 million a year and only taking home 200. Now, look, there's pros and cons to building a larger business and or keeping a small one. And I'm not going into that in today's video. The point is, if your goal is to only get to $1 million and you're willing to do whatever it takes, I think it's a poor goal, because I didn't consider how I got there. I didn't consider what exactly my business looked like. I'm thankful that I was modeling and working with coaches and mentors that I wanted to be more like them. And I think I got there with as few scrapes and bruises as possible. But once getting there, I just realized there was a lot of things about my business that I didn't like and that I needed to change, and things that I needed to learn about myself, and continuing to push down on the gas pedal while still needing to acquire a bunch of skills wasn't making my business any more enjoyable. In fact, it was actually the opposite. And so I've now come to learn that when you get to $1 million, or if I were to get to $1 million again, and for the first time, or if I was hitting there, what I would do differently is I would actually slow down my growth and make sure that the other elements of how I do business, how I'm designing, what I'm building for, is in alignment with where I want to be going and the lifestyle that I want to have. Because far too often we're seeing people build the business and then try to find ways to weave their life around their business instead of building their business around the life that they already want. That's why when we work with our clients, we really focus on the return that they're going to get on building the business of their dreams through really the 3 currencies that I think are the most important and most powerful. First is, what do you want your schedule to look like? What do you want your time to look like as it relates to when you're working on this business? How often do you want to be working? How many hours a week? How many weeks a year? How many vacations do you want? What do you want that schedule to look like? Then, when you are working, how do you want to be spending your energy? What do you want your role to be? Therefore, what other roles might you need around you? This is really where you're starting to create boundaries and constraints, the rules of the game that you're building your business around, so that it's actually something that you want, not just something that you saw in a scroll through Instagram. So if we focus on the schedule that we want and how we want to spend our energy when working inside the business and on the business, if we can get those right, and then it yields money, the third thing, the right amount of income, where if I have this schedule, if I get to spend my schedule on things that I love doing in my zone of genius, that if I were to make this much money a year from that, I would do this for the next 25 years. It's the return on your effort for building the business of your dreams. And we always work with clients now to focus on, hey, let's make sure we figure out the rules of the game that you are going to play so that you play your game and nobody else's. Because winning in business for you might look a lot different than winning in business for someone else. Hopefully this story serves you. And if you feel like you've been chasing towards a goal that felt misaligned, maybe you've been only chasing one element of the goal, like top line revenue, and you should actually consider the other things that are going to be important to you when you actually achieve that goal. The how you got there, the how you feel, what it's like day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, and the things that that business now affords you to do from a lifestyle perspective. I want my business to enable and weaponize me and my family to live an abundant lifestyle, go on the trips, do the things, and also spend a lot of time at home because we're homebodies. Go mountain biking, go on hikes, do things like that. Like, that's our wealthy and rich life, and you need to build your business around yours. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how we help agencies and freelancers do that, I'd say go check out this video because it's the best model to build a business around the life that you want.